Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pints and Quarts, a show presented by Craft Beer Nation. This is episode 27. Today is December the 18th, 2014, and we're joined by Yuseff Cherney, the head brewer, head distiller of Ballast Point. Stick around, watch the show, and don't touch that mouse. Let's get right down to it here. I'm Matt Miller, the host. We've got Vicky, Randy, Lola, Doug, Charles, and Gil with us tonight, and we are joined by Yuseff. And Yuseff was on the show once before. We did a spotlight on Ballast Point, I don't know, year and a half ago, and he is back to talk to us about things that they're doing now and some other fun things. So, Yuseff, we want to start and say hello. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Fantastic. We asked some of our viewers and some of our followers if they had any questions for you, and one of our viewers and one of our good friends, Ricky Potts, he's actually a contributor to the Craft Beer Nation. He said he got a chance to visit your new location, and it is huge, wicked huge. What are you planning on doing with that space? I mean, what are the overall expansion plans that you guys have?
Well, it's our fourth location now in San Diego, and we've got roughly 110,000 square feet there, with all of our office space for pretty much everybody that works there has an office now, which was far cry from what it was a few years ago, where we had 4 people per office. And we've got a new 150-barrel brew house that we pulled over from Germany. It's a copper onion dome brew house, which is, as far as I know, the only one like it in San Diego. So it's kind of a showpiece there. And we've got a full restaurant. It's one of the bigger restaurants in San Diego, especially in a brewery. Seats about 500 people, and we're doing full food. Beer, of course. We've got about 70 draft handles, doing beer from all of our locations, even including the R&D facility down in Little Italy. We're bringing up beers from there, and we're hoping to ramp that facility up to a couple 100,000 barrels.
Wow, that's pretty big. And a seating of 500, did you say, at the restaurant?
Yeah, I believe it's right around 550. We've got a whole outdoor beer garden now. We're working on putting in a little area for some cornhole gaming out there, and it's going to be it's definitely a destination. It's in the middle of the Miramar area, which is kind of an industrial complex, but there's so many people working in that area that are kind of, I think, hungry for a good spot to go get beer and food. And we've hired the same chef, Chef Colin McLagan, that was working at our other facility to come work for us down there. And,
all right.
Yeah, it's kind of up-to-go pub food.
Are you moving into this place, or moving? Is it an addition to your other locations?
It's an addition. We've kind of got a philosophy where we never shut down a brewery. It just shifts production to something else. So the other brewery that we're still doing about 120,000 barrels out of our original Scripps Ranch brewery, and that production's just shifting over to specialty beer. So you'll see, more Victory at Sea, some more specialty beers coming out of there. Then we've got the research and development plant down in Little Italy that we're doing only a couple barrels at a time. And then our very first spot, which has been around for going on 19 years now, with the homebrew shop, Homebrew Mart in the back, and that's still doing production too. So, nothing's really changing. Each place is staying open. We've got the distillery at the older Scripps Ranch location. The new location is strictly a brewery, and we're going to probably keep it that way. The distillery will just try to expand within the older location, but we don't really believe in that idea of kind of turning over a turnkey brewery like some of our other folks in San Diego. When they outgrow a spot, they just kind of hand it over to the next guy, and we put a lot of work into our places to just turn them over like that. And we kind of need the extra capacity, so it is nice to have these smaller breweries that can produce the specialty beers that are in high demand during the seasons.
Just out of curiosity, how big of a system do you do your R&D brewing on?
The R&D is 600 barrel. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Like, what?
Yeah.
The R&D is a 3-barrel, but we push it to about 5. So it's typically 3 to 5 barrel capacity. And then we do still homebrew at 5-gallon, 10-gallon batches as well to get. We'll have little contests amongst the brewers at work with 5-gallon batches, and then we'll see who ends up making the best beer, and then we'll graduate it to the 5-barrel. And then up to the 15-barrel, and then up to the 50, and then gradually to the 150. And a perfect example was the Grunion, which just won the gold medal for the Pale Ale category at the GABF. That one started off 2 years ago, I believe, as the contest winner of our homebrew contest here at Ballast Point. So Doug crushed it with that beer, and away it goes. Now it's going into cans in the next couple months.
I have this light American lager recipe I want to bounce off of you.
With a bunch of rice adjunct?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually funny you say that, because I'm dying to win a medal with a light American lager at the GABF, because it's been owned by the big boys for so long, and I think it'd be fantastic to have a craft beer winner instead of the typical guys that typically win that.
If you did that, you think I work for Ballast Point the way I'd be talking crap. If you guys did that.
Well, you can just go out and get California resident Annie Johnson on your staff, because she won the Homebrewers Association Homebrewer of the Year with a light lager a couple years ago. So we've talked to her a few times.
Right on.
Yeah. What else is coming? So what else? I mean, we've got Grunion in cans coming out here soon. What else is in the pipe?
Well, we've messed around a little bit with Fathom in cans, which is our India Pale Lager. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the whole beer camp across America, but
yeah, did you go everywhere with the bus?
I went to about 5 locations out of the 7. I was only on the bus for a few days, but I made it to quite a few of the festivals.
You look like you had fun, because you were always. I was following you on social media and seeing the pictures. I didn't see you suffering on that trip.
Yeah, the mornings were a little rough, but the beer we made with Sierra for that whole trip was a version of our Fathom, and they really dug it, and we've since started canning the Fathom, and we're going to release a little bit overseas as the initial release for the can, which is kind of unusual to do. Your first release of a product, not in our San Diego, let alone out of country. Along with that, we've got Grunion coming, which is our incredibly hoppy mosaic forward pale ale.
Yeah.
We've got Even Keel, in the cans now, which is our session IPA. It's actually what I'm drinking right now. And it's one of the lower session IPAs, 3.8% by volume. A lot of the sessions out there right now are, 5.5, which to me is more like a pale ale than a session. But it tastes remarkably like our other, very hoppy IPAs. If you're a Sculpin fan, the Even Keel is a nice one to drink if you're not looking for that crushing 7% alcohol,
So
I would say the one complaint that we get over and over about Ballast Point lately is you guys didn't brew enough grapefruit Sculpin.
The grapefruit Sculpin is coming in more quantity. With the new brewery online, we're brewing a lot of Sculpin, and we're definitely packaging. We're doing the 12-ounce bottles in grapefruit right now. And I think there is talk about canning some grapefruit Sculpin too. And I'm a big fan of the cans. They hold up. We're getting real good air levels in the cans. The structural integrity of the seal is better than a bottle, and they don't let the light in. So I think all in all, I've been liking the beer coming out of the cans quite a bit.
So, speaking of the beer camp, I think it was I know there were some folks from Oscar Blues there, and I think Ken was on the. I think Ken Grossman was on the bus and ended up buying like 2 or 3 crowler systems from Oscar Blues while they were on the bus. Do you guys do crowlers at all at Ballast Point?
It's funny. I was just emailing back and forth with Ken today about the crowler. Yeah, we do have. We just purchased one from Oscar Blues probably about 3 weeks ago, and we're working on the stand and kind of the contraption to hold it in place, so it can be used by our regular growler fillers. It's kind of I don't know if you've seen one, but it's kind of a contraption, and there's a lot of moving parts that go moving in and out as the can spins around at high speed, and it kind of wants to eat a finger. So before we install it, we're going to go ahead and put some shrouds on there and stuff, but it should be in effect in the next week or so.
Get your insurance liability cranked up good and high for the bartenders and the staff.
Trust me, we want nothing to do with insurance.
Imagine being able to go home with a crowler of grapefruit sculpin.
I know there's a certain fellow out in Texas that's looking for crowlers of Victory at Sea, so he can renegade them. Tony, I don't know if you guys know Tony Drury, but he's a huge craft beer fan. He plays in a couple bands out there, and even though he's a craft beer fan, he's also a fan of shotgunning beers, and he's got that "there's no beer that I can't shotgun" mentality. Well, of course, while he's appreciating the flavor.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty classic.
Challenge accepted. Here's 32 ounces of Victory at Sea.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Or fill something from the distillery. That'll stop him in his tracks.
Yeah, I don't need to. I like him too much.
Let's talk a little bit about the distillery. Which one of your 4 locations is that process set up in?
So the distillery's all it's the Swift Ranch facility, which is off Old Grove Road. And Old Grove is the namesake of our gin. It's the street we're on over there. I think we're at about 13 products now so far out of the distillery. We've got our vodka, our flavored vodkas, which we're affectionately calling Taco Shop series, which is horchata, jamaica, habanero, piña. They're all kind of San Diego's renowned for having a taco shop on every corner, and they all pour these specific drinks that are very near and dear to the hearts of the San Diegans, so we decided to use those as the basis for our flavored vodkas. Then we've got our rum, which is an organic sugarcane based rum, which we do in both white and barrel aged. And now we just released our spiced rum last week, which is perfect time for the holidays and some eggnog. And we've got whiskey and we've got bourbon. The problem with those is, much like grapefruit sculpin, they're in high demand, so they typically sell out in one day. We'll have a little bit more coming out next year, and then the year after we'll have a fairly consistent amount coming, because we're now dedicating to making about 20 barrels a month. So we've got a little bit more coming out. We just released our first herbal liqueur, and that's called Opa, which is kind of a hybrid of an anise-forward liqueur with a cinnamon kind of edge to it too. It's meant to be drank as a celebratory shot. So it's kind of one of those ones that you don't see coming out of a lot of craft distilleries. It's more of a European traditional aperitif or digestive type drink.
Anise being licorice flavor, right? So,
exactly. Yeah. So you got that little bit of a black licorice cinnamon combination. And it's real common, when you get into Germany or Austria or even Greece or
So you're making craft Jägermeister. That's what you got going on there.
Yeah, I would say it's quite a bit different, actually.
All right.
I'm not allowed to pronounce that name. But yeah, it's I think a market that doesn't really exist so much in the U.S. Whereas when you go to other places across the Atlantic, it's just everywhere. And then we're also we also have barrel rested gin. We're not allowed to call it barrel aged, but it's gin that we actually put in a brand new American oak barrel and let it sit there and get get that kind of flavor that a lot of the mixologists are looking for, that are barrel aging their own cocktails. So you can, make a Negroni with our barrel rested gin, and it's just fantastic.
You've been on the road a lot, right? Promoting the brewery. Have you been home at all lately?
No, I haven't been home. I actually been going out doing some, a little bit of personal travel, which has been kind of fun. My wife is from Austria. We got married over there this year, and got to cruise around and do a lot of different schnapps tastings and beer tastings, and actually some whiskey tastings, because Austria is kind of booming in the craft whiskey market now. But I get over to Germany quite a bit for we buy a lot of equipment there, and so I've been fortunate enough to get over there quite a few times and make my gold premier status this year.
So let me ask you this: we've spoken before about how it seems like the next thing is going to be sours. Do you guys have any sours on deck, or any plans to venture into that territory?
Yeah, we've been making a beer for quite a long time. That's a sour with a fruit addition as well. The sour wench is what we call it, and that beer definitely, it's one of those ones that we have so much request for it. It's just the processing of it, and then getting it into package. We keg it, but as far as getting it into a bottle or a can, we've been struggling with that step, just because it's made at the location that we don't have, the bottling equipment there. So.
Gotcha.
Cool.
But we're working on it.
All right. Well, we're going to keep you on here with us. We're going to talk about a few news stories now from the headlines this week, and really the first one that was, I would say, the bigger news for us, only because we all have very personal interest in Founders. I've got a good bit of their stuff on the shelf here in my cellar, but they sold 30% a 30% stake to what was the name of that company? Somebody help me out.
Miguel.
Yeah,
San
San
Miguel.
Miguel.
San Miguel. San Miguel. And it really, a lot of people have been, now they're macro and all this other kind of stuff. But we actually talked with Mike Stevens and kind of got the feeling that no, this is a move to pay off some investors that help them expand and get some distribution opportunities, and they're not changing a dang thing. That's pretty much what we've got now.
Yeah.
Anybody see anything different than that out there?
No, and I think it's interesting to note that San Miguel seems to be adamant about nothing changing, because they wanted to put employment contracts in place so that the people who are brewing the beer right now stay brewing the beer, because as Mike said, they said the integrity of the liquid that they make is what's gotten them to where they are today. So to go and change that would essentially be suicide, and they've been on the brink of financial ruin before, right? I mean, in the early days of Founders, that's where the beer boat cutter came from. They were about to be shut down. They were like, screw this, if we're gonna get shut down, we're gonna cut the lock off the place and just brew just one banging beer, and the boat cutter was born, right? So they've been there before. I doubt if they want to go back there, so they're not going to change a plan that's been working for them for I think 10 years now or something like that. The Founders has been brewing. No, longer than that.
Yeah, 97 is when they first started.
Yeah.
Okay, so almost 20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think it's a private, like a family-owned company as well. It's not like it's a big corporation that's investing in them.
It's a company that's been around for 100 years and still family.
So it's far from selling out.
Well, I mean, Yuseff, you must have to deal with the fact that you guys are getting close to being as big as craft breweries get. I mean, do you get any pushback from people that, you guys, this isn't craft, this isn't what craft set out to be, or they're just happy you keep making good liquid and move on?
Well, I think if you look at Sierra Nevada as, an example, I've had people tell me that Sierra Nevada has sold out or they're not craft anymore. Um, I'm here to tell you that Sierra Nevada is as craft can be. And Ken Grossman is, the owner of Sierra Nevada. He doesn't have anybody else. There's no investors there, as far as I know. There's no other organization that owns a third or a quarter or half or whatever. And not only does Ken know everything that Sierra Nevada is doing, from distribution to production to maintenance, he is the person making all the decisions, and their beer is as quality as it's ever been, if not higher quality now because of all the lab equipment and personnel they have. So they're at about 1 million barrels, and I think they're going to take it up even higher with the North Carolina facility. So we're nowhere near that, and I still think of them as one of my favorite craft beers. So yeah, I don't buy into the argument that that you get to a certain size and you're no longer craft, especially if it's it's the same couple people that myself and Jack White, who started Homebrew Mart and then founded Ballast Point. He's right down the office from me, and we've got people that we've been with for 15 plus years, and it's all that core group of people. And even though I started off as the first employee 23 years ago, now we've got almost 400 people working for us, and I still regard it as craft for sure. It's more the I think of craft as being owned by the founding people that started the business. It's a kind of a family-run business, and if you look at us, if you look at Sierra Nevada, they both fit that model.
It's kind of counterintuitive for people not wanting a company to grow. It's just, at the end of the day, it's a business.
Yeah, well, I've heard some people that talk about if a company is successful and it gets to this point, it's no longer craft, and I think maybe it is no longer craft when you have somebody else making the decisions for you. And if that's the case, then if the founding people that aren't making the critical decisions as far as quality and production go, then you might have slipped into the non-craft category. And that's the danger with the whole buyout situation, is that once you do have somebody come in and purchase a large chunk of your brewery, if they get into being able to kind of tell you how to run the business, then you run into the danger zone, I guess, is what I would say.
But yeah, outside of that, I mean, it's wrong to equate success with selling out. I mean, just like people, like you said, people do with Sierra Nevada. I mean, just because they've been successful and they've grown and they've gotten to the size that they are, that's far from selling out. That's called being a good businessman and making a good product that people want to buy.
Exactly.
So just drink some Celebrator.
Celebration
or Ruthless Rye when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess it's been going on for 100 years with rock bands too, right? So anytime, this is that little band that we saw in the bar downtown, and now they've got a gold album or a platinum album or whatever they measure the albums in, and they've sold out. They're no good anymore, I guess. But I don't know. I guess that everybody wants to feel connected to the brewery. They want to feel connected to Yuseff and the folks that have made the beer right down the street from them, and when they get so big, I guess they lose that access. So
I think people get territorial. They're like, "That's my brewery. You can't come."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think if you look at the successful breweries that are large, and I keep going back to Sierra, and I think even for us is Ken is still accessible. I mean, he put himself on a bus for 18 days, whatever it was. And then he was at every festival, and he was shaking hands. I mean, there was lines of people waiting to talk to him, and he was there, and that really impresses me. And I tend to try to model myself after him because I'd love to be him one day. But that's what I think is really cool about most craft brewers in general. You look at I was just hanging out with Garrett the other day from Maui Brewing. Super nice guy, super accessible. Adam Avery came down and did a fishing tournament down with us down here in San Diego for Beer Week. It's those kind of people that have been at it for a long time that get it. That to be part of the community and to be a face in the industry, it's what people like. I mean, they're buying beer from people that they have a connection with, and it's worth keeping that connection.
Yeah, and I even still consider Sam Adams to be craft. I know a lot of people don't, but I mean that Jim, I mean he kind of, I believe that they have like an incubator project where he puts money into people who want to open up a craft brewery. So, I mean, to say that they're not craft is again making them a victim of their own success. I mean Jim and Ken and those guys were the ones who kind of gave craft beer life early on in this country when the craft beer renaissance first kind of got started going again. So I mean
and Jim's out there, he's promoting the brand, he's making it out to GABF, and he's at World Beer Cup, and he's mingling around. There's it's not just this fake person behind the what was it, the golden-throated pitchman or whatever he said in one of his but it's cool to have actual people that are real in the industry, that are making something that people love to drink.
You're right about Ken Grossman. That guy, he shakes more hands than a politician. I mean, he is always accessible to people. So
yeah, that's one of the things we've since we've been doing this show that we've experienced, just reaching out to breweries. Doesn't matter how big or small. I mean, whoever it is running the company, marketing, doesn't matter. They're all come here, we'll talk. They're open about everything. They want to engage. Because you guys, you brew beer and you want people to drink it. So it's one of the things I like about this craft beer world is that there's no real pretension that we've come across with anybody so far. So it's a really open, welcoming industry.
Hey, Randy, let's talk in on the next subject here, a little bit about Texas.
Yeah, so some of the breweries in Texas are actually suing the Texas ABC because they feel as if the title of the article is Texas sued for stifling the craft beer renaissance. And I had to read this article several times to kind of figure out exactly what was going on. But it boils down to in 2013 there was a law passed, and well, before we talk about that, let's talk about what life was like before 2013. A lot of the breweries in Texas were self-distributing, right? So they kind of had essentially their own territories and whatnot. And then in 2013, they passed this law that essentially made them adopt the 3-tier system. So the breweries could no longer self-distribute. They had to go through a distributor. Well, the breweries got pissed because they felt like they were giving over their territorial rights to the distributor, and they weren't getting any compensation for it. And so now they're bringing a lawsuit from a lawyer out of Virginia, it so happens, and they're suing the Texas ABC. And we know a few people in Texas, and they're kind of like, I don't see what the big deal is. It's basically doing what the rest of the world is doing as far as the 3-tier system goes. So it's interesting that they're doing that, and it's going to be interesting to follow this and see where it actually ends up going, if they're going to allow the breweries to continue to self-distribute, or if they're going to enforce the 3-tier system as it is right now since 2013.
Well, those Texans, you don't mess with their independence.
So what is it like in California, Yuseff? Like, do you guys self-distribute, or do you go through a distributor, or because I think for example Stone self-distributes, right?
Yeah, well, Stone is a distributorship, so they're not only a brewery, but they're a distributor for 20 different breweries. So a lot of breweries here in San Diego use them for their craft beer distribution, and then they also do, I think, some German brewers. We self-distributed for about 10 years. And it was kind of a headache for us. We had drivers that we had to police, and then we had the trucks that we had to insure, and then we had the accidents and the tickets and everything like that. So we figured it was in our best interest to hire a distributor, and that worked out great for us. We were able to specialize in what we do best, which is making the beer, not driving it around. so these days, we employ distribution here in California, and of course, nationally, for the beer. Even though there is the ability to distribute your own beer in California, and that's why there are so many craft beer breweries in California, because that law does exist. With the spirits, it definitely has to go through a 3 tiers, so we're not allowed to distribute that ourselves. So we also use a distributorship for that. But for us, it's been, it was a necessity when we started, because we didn't have any money, and no distributor wanted to carry a beer that's only been around for a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
So it was necessary. But when we finally picked up a distributor, it's not necessarily that they're out dedicating salespeople to selling your brands. You still need the sales force behind it. But they have the logistics in place where they're already going to an account to drop 10 kegs. It's very easy for them to drop one of ours along with it. Having a distillery, we also are not allowed to be a distributor of our brand and other products. So Stone, as far as I understand, cannot have a distillery because they are a distributor themselves. So it's there's little strange laws in there that play into little decisions that we made over the course of
it. It does sound like you need a team of lawyers to understand the whole organization, the whole setup. So, yeah.
I think within the craft beer community, there's a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the 3-tier system. But like from on one hand, I'm like, you see all these distributors with these multi-million-dollar beer companies' name plastered on the side of their trucks, and I can't help but to believe that they have a little bit of influence. If you watch Beer Wars, you see how they go into the stores and they're able to essentially take up like the space on the shelves. They take up blocks of space and relegate craft beer to certain small, not so desirable sections. So I mean, you see that thing happening. You're like, well, these, there's supposed to be separation, but there's no way there's separation. Their name's plastered on the side. They're taking up space on the shelves. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, if there was no 3-tier, I probably wouldn't be getting Sculpin in Virginia. So it's definitely a little bit of a love-hate relationship. Is that kind of how do you guys view it, Yuseff?
Well, we're always stuck in the middle. There's the one side of people that back when we were self-distributed, a local bar would call up and say, "Hey, we're out of beer," and we'd go, "Hey, we'll get it to you in an hour," and we'd throw it in the back of whoever's truck was available, and we'd drive it down, and the people loved it. They had immediate access to our beer. The distributors don't work that way, so when you run out of beer and you didn't maybe plan to have that extra keg dropped off, it might be 3-4 days before that beer comes out to you. So it's a little hard knowing how we were back in the day and how we used to distribute beer and be bending over backwards for people. But you kind of got to just get over that, and we still put a lot of pressure to our distributors to keep our people happy out there that are buying beer from us. So we have a lot of handles out there, and there's so much competition, especially here in San Diego. You got, I think, over 90 breweries now operational, that we have to, the distributor has to maintain a good relationship, or we're going to be bumped for somebody that can drop a keg off, and at a moment's notice. So, but there is something to be said for loyalty to a brand, even with bar owners. They tend, if they like the people they're dealing with, they tend to stick with it, and that can work either for you or against you. There's definitely bars out there that have told us, hey, we want to deal with you directly, and we've worked some contracts where we can do that as well, maintaining our self-distribution rights just in case there's a breakdown somewhere.
Cool.
Vicky, did you have a question about chili beer we wanted to get in here before we were done?
No, I don't personally, but one of these guys on the event page has a question about how do you approach making a chili pepper beer?
Well, there's a few. We make a lot of chili pepper beers, and from the habanero sculpin, the Thai chili wahoo, the chipotle black marlin, all these different ones. And it depends on if you're talking about from a commercial brewer or a home brewer. As a commercial brewer, making what the home brewers call tinctures is not a viable option because of the laws. So typically the way we do it for consistency is you'd steep the pepper as a concentrated amount of peppers in the beer to get the heat extraction, and then you would take that kind of ultra hot mix and then blend it into the bright beer tank to get your certain level of heat that you want in the finished beer. So if you're talking from a homebrew perspective, what you'd probably have to do is put your beer in a keg, put the peppers in, and then have a way that you could yank them out when it got to a certain heat level, because it will keep ramping up. Or you could do 2 kegs, have one with no pepper, one with pepper, and then blend the 2 together. That would probably be a more consistent way to do it. Rack the peppers off the beer. Another way I've heard people doing it on a homebrew scale is to make a tincture, which is basically to take a high-proof alcohol like a vodka, soak peppers in there, extract the heat, and then add that to your finished beer. Of course, if you're doing that, you're adding alcohol, you're adding, along with the heat, but it's a real easy way to go because you're disinfecting the peppers at the same time you're extracting the heat from the pepper. So depends on what you're trying to do. The commercial guys, you're not really allowed to be fortifying beer,
Right.
All right, well, we want to talk about one of your beers specifically. Our next segment here is called the Review of the Week, and we pick a review from the internet. We talk about it. We read a couple paragraphs of it, and then we highlight it in our Google Plus community. And this week I've got a review of Grapefruit Sculpin. There's a release of it here in one of the couple of the stores in Richmond tomorrow. I'm going to hopefully get some, but I don't know. But this blog is called Modern Man Jack, and it's and his handle is Stubaka, I guess, like Chewbacca, but Stubaka. So I guess none of that is really anybody's real name, but he writes of the Grapefruit Sculpin from Ballast Point. On the tongue, this brew hits with the hops first. Then the grapefruit slaps the sides of your tongue. The malt finish comes and goes quickly. Then there's that long-lasting finish, and the complexity of this beer comes out. Next to the grapefruit, there is still that West Coast pininess and a floral touch to even it out. Those flavors go back and forth with a long fade. What makes this beer such a winner for me is that the brewers have taken a great beer and tweaked it just a little. It's the same beer you knew before, just wearing a slightly different outfit. They didn't drown the beer. They didn't drastically change it. Subtle but noticeable. Not overpowering but enjoyable. And that really sums up for me. He says it was subtle. I think the grapefruit was kind of in your face in that beer for me, but it wasn't unpleasantly in your face. It was, wow, that is grapefruit, and whoa, there's the Sculpin I love.
Yeah, well, a lot of people that are trying IPAs that don't have grapefruit in them are noticing grapefruit flavors. They're getting that from the hops that are in there. So to take a hoppy beer that has fruity notes and then add that in there, it makes sense.
An interesting compliment.
I've had a lot of people ask, how a lot of homebrewers, email and say, hey, I have this. How do you make this? And without going into a lot of detail because we can't. It's proprietary. But I tell them, hey, don't take a beer that doesn't have that grapefruit kind of backbone already. Start with something that you've hopped with, Centennial or Cascade, and that's got some of that citrus fruit already in there. Don't necessarily make a beer with Summit or Mosaic or something that has that real dank or garlicky onion kind of quality. You want all that citrus, and then try experimenting with some different grapefruits, because there's grapefruits that have huge aroma and there's some that have none. We've had people. I send out a good paragraph on what I would do, and then they write back, well, just give me amounts. I'm like, I can't really get into that. So, but it's similar to the habanero sculpin. When we started making that, it was the story behind this, going to the Mammoth Bluesapalooza Festival, which is a fantastic beer fest, and this guy was pouring a habanero pilsner, and he gave me some of it, and it was so hot that I couldn't drink it. But I went back to our booth, and we had the sculpin pouring, and I kind of poured them together, and I'm like, it was like the Reese's peanut butter moment, and like, these look so great together. And so we ended up starting to do that, and now, trying to hone in the heat, it's very hard. Sometimes you'll get some habaneros, it's crazy hot, and we've actually got a lab tech named Lauren who developed a way of using a spectrometer to measure the heat in the beer, so we can try to get consistency over our heat levels. So there's all sorts of weird technology stuff that is playing into these unusual beers, trying to make them consistent.
I would imagine if you tried to just continuously taste that for heat levels, you'd get palate fatigue pretty quick. It would be hard to discern how much, well, this one is not as hot as it was, because you're burned out on it. So
yeah, and actually the different habaneros that we get, even from different suppliers, have different tastes, and that's the one thing about the habanero is it's not just about the heat. There's actually a really cool flavor associated with the pepper itself too.
All right.
Did somebody in here make a pineapple beer once?
Are you asking me?
No, I started to the rest of the group here.
Oh yeah. Gil made a pineapple beer. I liked it. I'm sorry if you guys going to pick on him. I liked it.
You guys.
I know we've got Victory at Sea Day coming up here. I think it's on the 21st, and there's going to be like 15 varieties of our Victory at Sea. And one of them is called Victory at Cereal, where they use actual like Captain Crunch in there. So I mean, there is almost no limit of what's going into beer these days. Where it's almost like we're going to have to reinstitute the Reinheitsgebot to calm some of this stuff down.
Well, there was a brewery, I forget which brewery it was, up in like the Boulder area that's used a bunch of cereal in their beer, and then there's outrage in the community from some lady because she couldn't buy. It was the Count Chocula.
Yeah, they bought everything in the store.
They bought all the Count Chocula. She was some like crazy like vegan and goes like once a year, like goes against her beliefs and buys all the Count Chocolate she can.
From
But some
Target.
brewery some brewery bought it all. There,
I
so
would
they
get
can
mad
have
too, because I wait every year. Halloween time, I get blueberry, I get Frankenberry, I get Count Chocula. I still have 6 boxes in there.
All right. We're bringing this back to beer.
I'm not crazy.
Gil, tell us about Terrapin's Turtleneck Gingerbread Winter Warmer.
Yeah, Terrapin started a new tradition last year, so this is the second time. So what they do, the VP from Terrapin, Dustin Watts, came with this idea, as I was told by the brewery last year. And what they do, they have an employee homebrew challenge. So they give them $75 and a 5-gallon batch, and then they have to brew a beer that is delicious, kind of some new. And then they have a holiday party on the weekend. They do a sketch or something, and to add that. And then the winner gets their beer, brewed large scale, which is part of the whole competition. The beer has to be able to easily be produced in large scale. So Terrapin has this side project. So last year they have the Pineapple Express actually, and this year they did the Turtleneck Gingerbread Winter Warmer. So check it out. Should be coming out soon. They didn't have a specific date yet, but one last thing I want to say is that they put on the bottle that no gingerbread men or women were harming on the making of this beer. So.
They weren't eating, because I would totally eat them.
Yeah, I would have crushed them, really, straight up.
Literally crushed.
Yeah.
I'll put the specs on the event, and you can look at. It sounds delicious, and I'm a gingerbread lover. So
it's like ground cinnamon, chicory, ginger, allspice, clove, nutmeg, just exactly what you'd have in a gingerbread cookie there too. So, other notable releases: New Belgium has got Portage coming out. It's a porter brewed with roasted coffee, chocolate, and almonds. That's coming out at the end of December, January, something like that. Also, a Slow Ride Session IPA to be released in January. We are looking forward to spending some time with Kim Jordan in 2015, so we'll have to talk to her about those. Prairie Artisan has got an Apple Brandy Noir. It's an imperial stout aged in brandy barrels. Seems like they've got a release every week here, don't they? They're really cranking the beer out there in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sly Fox in Pennsylvania has got the 2014 Christmas Limited Edition. It's brewed with mulling spices, ginger, allspice, cinnamon, and nutmeg. That came out this past week. Revolution in Chicago has got a Little Crazy Belgio-style pale ale, a tri-hop blend of Magnum Cascade and Citra hops. That came out yesterday. Dry Dock in Aurora, chocolate raspberry porter. Boulevard's got Imperial Stout. Oh, man, is it time for that already? That big stout. This thing doesn't say the ABV, but if I remember, that was a big, chewy beer last year.
I should have looked at it. I saw it on the shelf today.
Yeah, aged in whiskey barrels that came out on the 15th. Smutty Nose in Hampton, New Hampshire has got Mistletoe. It's a festive take on Beer to Guard, brewed with sweet cherries, black currants, and plums, aged on lightly toasted American oak. Stone has got their Enjoy After 12/26/15 Brett IPA. That is coming out here soon. Jester King has got Bière de Blanc du Bois, barrel aged with Texas native souring bacteria and re-fermented with Blanc du Bois grapes, coming out tomorrow. Doesn't sound like a beer, does it? Sounds like a wine.
Jester King, man. Anything.
Yeah, but that's the releases. And when is the Grunion going to be available, distributed?
That is a good question. It's out there. It's already out there in draft.
Gotcha.
But as far as the cans or bottles, we're still working on label approval and all that
so
stuff.
Let's go with soon on that. Festivals. There's a 3DR annual 12 Beers of Christmas in Cambridge, Massachusetts, on the 18th. That's what, tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Beer
today.
Today, yeah, you're right. Beer Geek Christmas in Lancaster, Pennsylvania is actually Christmas weekend, next Friday and Saturday. Brew Year's Eve is in Chicago on the 31st of New Year's Eve. And then looking ahead to the first weekend in January, Big Beers, Belgians, and a Barley Wine Festival in Vail, Colorado. So among other important dates, looks like the GABF confirms its 2015 dates. It's going to be Thursday, the 24th of September, through Saturday the 26th. So get your tickets and airline and hotel reservations made as quick as possible, because I bet that place is going to be crazy.
I think Ballast Point has the Lost at Sea party going on.
Yeah, when is it? What's the date on that party? Yeah, we're asking him a question. He's going to have to guess that again. He'll unmute and answer.
Are you? Did you hit me with something? Sorry.
Yeah, we were looking for when your Victory at Sea party is.
21st.
21st. All right. So if you're in San Diego, find one of their locations and go to that. It sounds like a good time if you want Victory at Sea with Captain Crunch in it. That really is it. We went a little bit long tonight, but we had an interesting conversation going, and we wanted to try and squeeze it all in. So really, we're going to take 2 weeks off. We're off for Christmas and New Year's. They both land on a Thursday night, so we're going to take 2 weeks off and spend it with our family. You spend it with yours, and we're coming back on January 8th with Mike Tonsmere, and he is the author of American Sours. So that's going to be an exciting show. We definitely will talk about Lactobacillus and Brettanomyces and all those kind of fun things. So join us back here in January for episode 28 with Mike. And until then, everybody, thanks for coming around. So find some good friends. Find some great Ballast Point beer in cans or bottles or spirits, and mind those P's and Q's.